Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you need a shortcut to being the most informed person in the room on the future of conservation, well, you've definitely come to the right place. Today, we are getting into a really interesting paper by Tomo Sion Jones and his colleagues. It was published in NeoBiota. And it asks this brilliant and actually deceptively simple question. Can everyday gardeners, the millions of them out there, can they actually identify plants that might become future invasive species?
Yeah, and this is such a critical topic for a deep dive because, when we talk about what's driving the global nature crisis, invasive species are, well, they're right up there in the top 5.
Right alongside climate change.
Exactly. And the economic cost alone is just staggering. I mean, in the UK, these unwanted guests, let's call them, they've cost the economy somewhere between 5.4 and, get this, 13.7 billion pounds since 1976.
Wow, billion. That's huge.
It really is. And that price tag, well, it just proves that prevention isn't just good for ecology, it's fundamental economics too.
And this paper points to the core of the problem, doesn't it? What's actually driving this massive influx?
Well, the main introduction pathway globally, it's us, our obsession with ornamental gardening.
We buy the plants, we like how they look, we put them in the ground.
And that's often where the trouble starts. It creates this just massive, sprawling pool of potential trouble.
Future invaders.
That's what the researchers call them, yeah. All those ornamental species, they estimate, around 70,000 are available for sale just in the UK that are currently sort of confined to gardens. Or maybe they've naturalized a bit quietly out in the wild, but they haven't yet been officially flagged as, harmful or invasive.
They're like ticking time bombs, basically.
Pretty much, just waiting for the right conditions to really take off.
Okay, 70,000 potential threats. You can see straight away that's just impossible for a handful of scientists to track effectively.
No way.
So the mission here for this paper was really about finding a way to crowdsource that monitoring, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The core question is, can Britain's, estimated 30 million gardeners, can they act as a kind of surveillance system?
The first contact observers.
Exactly. Can they help us prioritize which of these future invaders need immediate formal risk assessment before it's too late?
And the need for this is just so clear when you look at how our gardens are literally reshaping the wild landscape.
It's quite shocking, actually. Non-native plants now make up over half of the wild flora in Britain and Ireland.
Half.
Over half. And globally, the source material suggests that at least 75% of all naturalized plants growing wild that aren't native are thought to have originally escaped from domestic gardens.
So gardens aren't just these isolated little plots. They're the primary source pool.
They're literally fueling this aspect of the nature crisis, yeah.
Which brings us neatly to the research gap this paper addresses. Because the usual method for spotting threats, what scientists call horizon scanning.
Right, horizon scanning.
That usually looks for species that haven't yet escaped gardens, correct? It's more about future imports.
Exactly. It's useful for checking what might arrive, but it totally misses a crucial category.
Which is?
It misses the plants that are already out there. They're naturalized, meaning, they're reproducing on their own, they're persisting in the wild, but maybe they just aren't causing major, obvious damage yet.
Oh, okay.
And that's why we potentially need the gardeners, because they have this intimate, day-to-day, localized knowledge. They see which plants are showing invasive behavior.
Even if it's just growing really aggressively within their own garden beds.
Precisely. Even within those highly managed confines, they know the ones that are thugs, the ones trying to take over.
And it makes sense. If we can identify and, stop these plants before they properly cross that threshold from just being a garden nuisance to a full-blown ecological threat.
The savings, ecologically and economically, would be massive.
Prevention's always better than cure,
right?
Especially with invasives.
Absolutely. The literature's been saying for decades, prevention is really the only truly cost-effective approach here. Eradication later is incredibly expensive, often impossible.
And just thinking about the scale, you mentioned 30 million gardeners.
Yeah, estimate 30 million in Britain. Compare that to the number of professional botanists doing formal surveys.
It's orders of magnitude different.
Exactly. So this research is really about leveraging that sheer scale, that potential citizen science army, to achieve something that a small group of scientists just, cannot do alone.
Okay, so the threat pool is enormous, 70,000 plants. The potential resource, 30 million gardeners, is vast. How did the researchers actually go about tapping into this knowledge? What was the method?
Right, so they used two large complementary online surveys, and they ended up getting data from 558 gardeners, both amateur and professional, across Britain and Ireland.
And how did they get the word out?
Oh, they advertised pretty widely. For instance, one survey was promoted in the Royal Horticultural Society's magazine, The Garden, which has a huge circulation, over 500,000.
Okay, so good reach. And what did they ask people?
It was quite simple, actually. They asked gardeners to list up to 3 ornamental species, so not just any weeds, but ornamentals they'd noticed invading or taking over their garden.
Up to 3. Okay, but here's where the methodology gets really, really interesting and maybe a bit counterintuitive.
Or,
They deliberately, intentionally did not give the gardeners a scientific definition of what an invasive species actually is.
hang on, they let people just use their own interpretation of invasive, knowing it might be wrong scientifically.
Exactly. They knew the technical definition involves ecological impact outside cultivation in the wild. But they specifically wanted to capture the gardener's perspective. What does invasive behavior look like in the garden?
Ah, I see. So they were after the reports of plants being aggressive, being bullies in the border, regardless of the strict definition.
Precisely. They wanted those raw, crowdsourced reports of, this thing is a real nuisance, figuring they could apply the scientific filter later on.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Get the raw intel first, then refine. So what did they get back?
Well, after the usual data cleaning, standardizing names, correcting spellings, assigning proper scientific taxa, they distilled it all down. They ended up with 847 distinct reports, which covered 251 different plant types, including specific cultivars people had named.
251 taxa from just 558 gardeners. That's quite a range.
It is. And here's where the analysis got really revealing. They calculated something called the species accumulation curve.
Okay, what does that tell us?
It basically estimates how many more new species you'd likely find if you kept surveying more people. And the curve, it didn't flatten out. It was still climbing steeply.
Ah, so they hadn't reached saturation, meaning there are likely many more potential future invaders being seen by gardeners that just weren't captured in this particular survey group.
Exactly. They hadn't scratched the surface, really. Their extrapolation suggested that if they doubled the number of reports, they might have identified anywhere from 291 to maybe 353 different species being reported as problematic.
Wow. So there's a lot more information out there in people's gardens.
Definitely. And when you look at what was reported most often in this study, well, it's the plants many gardeners would probably nod along to. The notorious garden thugs.
Let me guess. Things like Japanese anemone.
Top of the list, Anemone S. hybrida, 86 reports. Also, Crocosmia S., Crocosmia flora, Montbretia, 82 reports. And Alchemillamalis, lady's mantle, 79 reports.
Okay, yeah. Those are definitely plants known for enthusiastic spreading in gardens. They're clearly perceived as problematic by gardeners.
But this very finding leads us straight into the major challenge they identified, what they called the conflation problem.
Right, because problematic in my garden isn't the same as invasive in the wild.
Precisely. If you ask a non-specialist gardener what's invasive, they're likely to name whatever plant is currently giving them the most grief, whether it's technically invasive or not.
And the data showed this.
Clearly. They found 169 reports were actually for native species, plants native to Britain.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
The top 2 reported invaders that were actually native were Hedera helix common ivy, with 24 reports, and Carex pendula, that big pendulous sedge, with 22 reports.
Okay, ivy. Yeah, anyone with a garden knows ivy can be a total thug, really hard to control.
Absolutely. A garden thug, yes. But it's native.
Yeah.
It's not ecologically invasive in the scientific sense of harming native ecosystems because it's non-native.
So this confirms that gardeners often mix up the term invasive, which has that specific ecological meaning, with just aggressive, weedy, or hard to get rid of.
Exactly. That calculated risk the researchers took by not defining the term up front, it definitely created a lot of this noise in the data.
So the raw data was messy. It included genuine non-native sugs, but also native plants that are just vigorous growers. They couldn't just take the list at face value.
No, they needed a filter.
Yeah.
A way to sift through those 847 reports and pull out the ones that represented the highest ecological risk.
So how did they do that? How do you take those mixed reports and refine them down to a useful, targeted list of potential actual future invaders?
They developed this rather clever, structured prioritization scheme. It was the key methodological innovation, really.
Okay, how did it work?
It basically combined 2 crucial bits of information for each reported plant. First, its domestic status here in Britain. Was it just a casual escapee? Was it a survivor? Or was it already properly naturalized and reproducing in the wild?
Right. Where is it on the invasion pathway already?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And second, they checked its global invasive status. They looked it up in major scientific databases like GRI's, the Global Register of Introduced and Invasive Species, to see if it's known to be invasive anywhere else in the world.
Ah, clever. So combining its current status here with its known behavior elsewhere.
Precisely. It gives you a much better indication of risk. And the result of applying this structured filter is, I think, the most powerful takeaway from the whole study.
Which is?
The scheme pinpointed a specific structured shortlist of 9 ornamental species of concern. 9 plants that, based on the gardener's reports filtered through this scheme, should be immediately prioritized for formal, expensive scientific risk assessment.
This is the gold. The actionable intelligence dug up by the gardeners, refined by the scientists.
Exactly. And these aren't just abstract threats. The shortlist includes plants like Italicum subdebsibi, Italicum Italian lords and ladies.
Oh, yes.
Hotunia cordata.
Ugh, don't mention it. Anyone who's tried to get rid of that knows it's practically indestructible. Chameleon plant.
Right. Also Verbena bonariensis, which is hugely popular, and Symphyotrichum novi belgi, the New York aster.
Okay, so some quite common garden plants on that list.
Some very common ones. But here's the real kicker, the true aha moment for the scientific community that proves the value of this approach.
Go on.
None of those 9 shortlisted plants, the ones flagged by the gardeners in the prioritization scheme, none of them were identified by the most recent formal horizon scanning process for Great Britain.
Wow. Why not? Why did the official system miss them?
Because, as we discussed, formal horizon scanning is generally designed to look for potential new arrivals, plants not yet established or widespread in the wild.
Right. And these 9?
These 9 were already here. They were already present in the wild, already naturalized to some degree, maybe reproducing. And because they weren't new, the standard horizon scanning overlooked them.
So the gardener survey, combined with that filtering scheme, specifically plugged that critical gap. It found the potential threats already lurking within the established flora.
Exactly. It confirms the unique value of this citizen science approach for identifying these established but not yet widely problematic species.
That's a really significant finding.
It is. But, of course, it wasn't perfect. Beyond that conflation problem we talked about, the researchers noted other challenges, especially around accurate identification.
Ah, yes. Getting the names right.
Yeah.
Even with keen gardeners, that can be tricky.
Definitely. Even when people gave a common name, it was often ambiguous or even incorrect. They mentioned Japanese anemone, for instance, which gardeners use for several different, though related, scientific taxa.
Right, it's not specific enough.
Or the classic example of Spanish bluebell. People report that all the time.
But often what they actually have in their garden isn't the true Hyacinthoides hispanica, which is apparently quite rare in the wild here.
It's usually the hybrid Hyacinthoides exmassarciana, which is the really vigorous one that spreads everywhere.
Okay. So that level of identification uncertainty, well, it means future citizen science efforts like this probably need even clearer guidance or maybe photo uploads, something to help verify the ID.
For sure. So, thinking ahead, if this approach is going to become a really robust tool for conservation, how do we improve the model? How do we maximize the quality of this crowdsourced data?
Well, the paper itself suggested a couple of key improvements based on their experience.
Like what?
First, future surveys should probably explicitly explain the difference between an invasive species, one causing ecological harm, and just a vigorous garden weeder thug.
To try and reduce that conflation noise right from the start.
Exactly. Just a bit more education up front might filter the reports better. And second, they suggested lifting the restriction on reporting only 3 plants.
Let people list as many as they want.
Yeah. They think that might help reach that species accumulation saturation point faster. If someone knows 10 thugs in their garden, let them report all 10. You might uncover more potential threats that way.
That makes sense. It sounds like it could create this really powerful, positive feedback loop.
How so?
Well, gardeners provide the raw, early detection data. This plant is going wild in my garden. Scientists then apply their filters and expertise to identify the high-risk ones.
Okay.
And then that intelligence feeds back into educational awareness for the gardening community. Be aware, this popular ornamental you love, it's actually on the watch list. Maybe consider alternatives.
Ah, I see. So it closes the loop. Gardeners help science, And science helps gardeners make more informed, responsible choices.
Exactly. Which hopefully helps reduce the future risk from that enormous pool of, what was it, 70,000 ornamentals still needing assessment.
That's the potential, yes. And I think the study really proves that data collected from the public, even if it's initially a bit messy or noisy, can be successfully used in a structured way to prioritize real conservation threats.
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean? What's the big picture here?
Well, I think the study fundamentally confirms that, yes, everyday gardeners can act as effective eyes and ears on the ground.
They can identify these future invaders.
They can, especially those ones that formal science might miss because they're already naturalized but not yet causing widespread chaos. This crowdsourced surveillance seems, well, pretty essential, actually.
And you mentioned the global context earlier.
Yeah, this directly connects to those huge international goals, like Target 6 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The aim there is to massively reduce the introduction and spread of invasive species globally.
Big ambition.
Huge.
Yeah.
And what this research suggests, I think, is that achieving those massive conservation targets might depend just as much on the collective vigilance of millions of amateur gardeners.
As it does on the dedicated work of a relatively small number of professional scientists.
Precisely. Which leaves us with a rather provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Is that plant that's currently running rampant, taking over your flower border or maybe escaping into the lawn, could it actually be more than just a garden nuisance? Could it potentially be a threat to the biodiversity of your entire region or country? This paper suggests it's a question worth asking.